shared them right at the very start. So appreciate your input on that. So let me put the chat box back so I can see that as we're going along, just in case I make any fundamental errors. So I trust you can see them all now. Thank you, folks. So let me then just very quickly just go back to that one for those that haven't seen it before. So that was what I was showing to me and no one else. Control, commitment, challenge, and confidence, and the 8 subdomains under control: self-control, emotional control, commitment, goal setting, and achievement, which is where we're going today. And then challenge and confidence to come in the coming weeks. And then the slide I moved on to was just this overall kind of idea of goal orientation, which is where commitment is focused towards. Those two elements being of goal setting, which we covered. I'm just going to have a quick review on, and then goal achievement, which is where we're headed. So a couple of reminders, a couple of slides from last time round as a quick reminder. So in terms of goal setting, 3 kind of types of goals I think is fundamental here. So purpose, and purpose we just come back to time and time again. The whole sort of domain of commitment is surrounded by purpose, knowing where you are going. So purpose goals, having broad aims, knowing where we're trying to get to. And then breaking those down into performance. And SMART objectives are often the ones that we talk about here. I'm going to show you the Lock and Latham model as a reminder in a minute or two. But breaking that purpose into performance goals. What do I need to do to achieve that purpose? And then breaking those performance down into process. So that sort of micro level. An example I think I gave using sort of the triathlon world is the purpose maybe to win or complete a race. And the performance may be I need to complete a particular time for a run, a swim, and a bike. But the process is what I do on a day-to-day basis. And that's really broken down to individual sessions and real detail in terms of the timings and the heart rate levels and the power levels that I need to achieve, etc. So that process, those process goals are critical. Small steps towards that broader purpose. And we'll come back to these a little bit, which is why I wanted to mention them again. And then one of the sort of key theories that sit around goal setting, but also goal achievement, is the Lock and Latham model. So many of us are kind of familiar with SMART, but Lock and Latham, from a psychological point of view, were the kind of the forefathers of SMART, if you like. And they talked about clarity, so specific goals, if you like. Challenge, we'll come back to challenge in next session. So we'll touch upon it today, but we have a whole webinar on challenge, or 2 webinars on challenge. Commitment is about to what degree people buy into it. So that's key in the webinar today. Communication and then complexity. So when we're setting goals, these 5 elements I think are really important. And then the final bit, so I'm just skipping over these because we covered them last time, are just those kind of words of advice in terms of if we're struggling with setting goals. Just 3 little bits of advice we've finished with. So number 1, just don't set too many goals. So one of the reasons, moving into where we're talking about today, is why we don't achieve a lot of the goals. We just set too many. And with so many goals being set, then we're just spreading ourselves way too thin. The second point is make them short term. So the other criticism we have with goals, and we see this in the workplace an awful lot, is that goals are just over too long a term. They're too far away into the future, and we just can't see that far. And things change so quickly, particularly these days. So we want to make goals short term. So I have no problem with kind of broader, long term sort of purpose and vision and dreams of where we're trying to get to, but then we need to break them down into those 3 steps. So we need to make them short term. And finally, from the positive psychology school, make them positive. Something that you want to do, something that you like, something that you enjoy. We'll come onto that in a moment or two. Positivity is critical. And you can see why often then in the workplace we don't get a lot of workplace objectives don't get achieved because we have too many of them. They're too long term and they're not particularly positive. They're actually quite stressful. They're kind of often very metric orientated and they're too stretching, for example, or they're just not stuff we're that interested in, to be perfectly honest. So we need to, in our own life, set goals. 3 of them, make them short term, make them positive is a good place to start. So let's move forward to today. So here we have the C of commitment. We talked about the goal setting. Here we go on to goal achievement. There are many people who set goals. Most of us set goals. Lots of us set lots of goals, but we don't all achieve them. So, you know, it's absolutely a different thing. And from a personality point of view, from a psychometric point of view, doing the mental toughness psychometric model, then, you know, there are people who, you know, score very highly in goal setting, but very low in goal achievement. So it's a kind of slightly different sets of skills, and often they're kind of lumped together. There's an assumption that we kind of set our goals and then we're going to go ahead and achieve them. I think it's important we kind of break this bit out and look a bit closer into what we mean. So goal achievement, the ability to succeed in what you set out to do. So we know we're going to set out to do something, it's succeeding in that. And I'm going to follow the same theme as the goal setting. So let's just follow this one through with 3 more P's. And this is where we're going to head to in the next 45 minutes or so. So 3 principles of goal achievement, or goal achievements. I'm not quite sure why I put the S on the end there. So we're keeping to our P's: passion, perfect practice, and perseverance. So this is a huge area. You know, there's a lot of stuff I do around this area in sort of workshops and webinars and coaching. So as always, we're kind of skipping over and just picking out some sort of fundamentals. But I think these are 3 good ones. So let's just kind of chuck our pennyworth in over these 3 for the next 45 minutes and see where it takes us. So let's start with passion, if we may. And I guess, again, let's kind of have a little definition. And by all means, folks, use your chat box. What are you passionate about? What are your passions? Do you have a passion? Do you have many passions? Is it easy? Is it easy to write in the chat box? Are you willing to share your passions? Some people don't like to kind of share their passions particularly. So I'm interested, if you can and you're prepared to, and you're able, then in the chat box, not necessarily for my benefit, for other people's benefit, it's just always interesting to have a look at. If you have a passion or you have passions, then feel free to put them in that chat box. And as we do so, that definition, a strong and barely controlled emotion. So, you know, passion is an emotion, and it's a very strong, it's a very powerful emotion, to the degree where we find it difficult to control it. You know, we get so passionate about it that we often lose an element of control. I can see Miriam Murphy. Thank you. Well-being, mental well-being is a passion, and it's, dare I say, a good passion to have now. It depends whether you're helping others with their mental well-being or whether it's on your own well-being. Anyone else can then put those down. So passion, a strong and barely controlled emotion. And a lot of people kind of struggle with this a little bit. So let's just kind of push in and kind of see if we can think about kind of what this word means and kind of how we find it. So if you go on to, if you Google, then there's masses and masses of stuff around finding your passion. And as I see there, okay, competing with your horse, and helps well-being. I like that, Caroline. Being competitive, sport, horsing. There are lots of things there to be passionate about. And I guess the question is, how did you find it? If you have one, how did you find your passion? When did you find it? Did it find you? You know, there's a lot that it's worth kind of just, again, as always, I'm a great one for reflection. It's just kind of sitting back and exploring this word a little bit and saying, well, what is it? And where did it come from? Was it a journey? Was it something that I sought and found, or I'm still seeking, or one that came and smacked you in the face? And as I say, are there many? How many kind of passions can you have, I think? So there's loads of questions that sit around just kind of finding it. And you know, you can play with words. And I think I've got a list of I think that's 64, very happy now. I might try and share it in the chat box in a moment, of words that may help you find your passion. I'll come back to that in a second or two. So just how you found it, when you found it, did it find you, etc. And if we're going to talk passion, then we need to mention this book, Grit. So Grit covers actually two of our bases for today, passion and perseverance. So the first and third of our elements we're going to talk about today. So Angela Duckworth wrote the book Grit probably 7 or 8 years ago now. And it's got a very strong foothold, I think, in circles who are dealing with sort of well-being and mental toughness, etc. And very much, the theme of the book is around passion and perseverance over talent. Is what makes people successful, is passion and perseverance. It's not to say that talent isn't important, but maybe passion and perseverance is undermined. And I think even more than that, then I think one of the things that Angela Duckworth talks about is how everyone grabs hold of the perseverance bit, but not so much the passion bit. Is that people kind of take the passion bit for granted, that perseverance is the tough bit to do, and passion is relatively easy. And as she says, I know, the quote there, I know how to work hard. One of the hardest working people in peer group, just don't know what I want to do with my life. That passion bit. And so she had a real struggle in kind of finding her passion. So there are three things that she talked about as fundamentals to finding passion. I've got a few more thoughts for you in the next 5 minutes or so. But let's try and get a little bit practical about it as best we can with a subject such as this. So number one, do something. So I think that's pretty good advice. We can talk about stuff, we can think about stuff, we can write stuff down, but actually we need to be doing stuff. When I say doing stuff, writing maybe doing stuff. But we've got to experience stuff, I think. If passion is an emotion, then this is about sort of getting involved and doing something, whatever it may be. Go try, go experiment. But then ideally you want to do lots of things. So, you need to experiment and find and try lots of different things to find your passion. Then variety is the spice of life. Having an eclectic group of things that you go out and do will help you find that passion. So whether that's work and social environment and domestic environment, different sports, different activities, different pastimes, different social groups, it's about doing lots. And the more you do, then the more chance, of course, you have of finding your passion. But the other great word of advice that she has is around patience. Is be patient, is take time. Is that we can think we found something, but often we need to have a bit of a slow burner on it. We can enjoy something, but is it a passion? And maybe passion takes a bit of time. So 3 words where that Angela Duckworth kind of talks about when it comes to passion itself. And I'm going to come back to her in a minute or two and to grit. Because there are several areas that I think we need to challenge and question, or I challenge and question. But just whilst we're on this theme of finding your passion, so here's 3 things that you can do, according to Angela Duckworth in Grit. One of the other places you can go to is go and do the passion test. So here is a way, and I say that kind of, I laugh, I don't quite mean it to be so humorous about it. It may be a very good way to go and find your passions. Based on a book called The Passion Test, you see I've put lots of book references up here. As we've got a short amount of time to kind of chat through this stuff, then those of you that are interested in taking it to deeper levels, then if you've got some books to kind of just reference, then I'm sure that will help. So you can go to the passion test, .geniussu.com, and you can go and take a passion test. As it says, as you see, I've just grabbed a screenshot there. It takes about 15 minutes to go and do. And it's a good little exercise in just taking time out to think about, what motivates, we'll come on to motivation in a minute, and kind of where your interests and potential passions may lie. So on the one hand, you've got the book, and I'm going to reference that in a second or two. But if you are interested because you're completely lost and have no idea where to go in terms of finding your passions, then you could do worse than go and take the passion test, which I think is free, or I'm pretty sure it's free. It just means you need to sign up to them, or so you can cancel the email subscription. But go and do it, and it'll give you some food for thought. So it's quite a good test, and quite well laid out test at that website. And the fundamentals of the book have sort of 7 principles that are probably worth mentioning in terms of the effort that passed to discovering your life purpose, as the passion test says on the book cover. And these are areas that we talked about before, or we are talking about, and will be talking about. So this, what he talks about, or they talk about, Janet and Chris, are absolutely in line with where I come from on this. So commitment is what we're talking about absolutely now, the second C. Clarity is being absolutely clear on what we want to be doing and where we want to be going and what we are doing. Attention, so we talked before, and we'll talk again about focused attention. Staying open, being open-minded, I think is really important. Staying open to opportunities, keeping our eyes open, literally, to what's going on around us and what is happening. Integrity, being honest with ourselves and others. Persistence, we'll come back to that in a little bit. Following your heart, is what is your gut feeling telling you? What does your intuition tell you? Is what he talks about, or I say he, because Chris Atwood, sorry, is often kind of attributed, although Janet Bray Atwood also is very much part of the book, so they, to be more accurate. But those are 7 kind of good practices, I guess, in terms of kind of looking to find our purpose. And if you want to take it one stage further than that, and while we're on the kind of book references, then another place you can go to is 25 questions you must ask yourself to find your passion. So I put 10 up here, and there are 25. I've got a PDF of the 25, but if you want to go and get the book, obviously the book will get into a lot more depth, and you may need a bit of depth, because you'll see with 1 or 2 of the questions that you'll look at them and you'll go, what? And what I mean by that is, if you look at question 2, for example. So question number 1, what do you really want? So there's a good question to start finding your passion. Number 2, what would you want if you didn't have to be unhappy about not getting it? So that may take you getting your head around a little bit. Essentially, it's talking about, what are you happy with right now? What makes you happy this minute, today, is kind of where it's coming from on that. But you can see that some of these questions take a little bit of thought, and time we don't have. So I'm going to just skip through the top, I say the top 10, the first 10, and then 15 after to follow that I can give you in a PDF if you want, or go and have a look at the book. What's stopping you? Let's get through them. What specifically is it about it that stops you? How is that stopping you now? How could you solve the problems that stop you? How does X mean that you can't do Y? If all of your problems were solved, what would you do? It's a very common question asked there. What are your interests? We get more simple. And what were your interests? So the book follows these 25 questions that are there for you to really think about kind of what it is that you are passionate about. Okay, just on that then, let me change tack a little bit. So there are lots of things that we can do to go and find our passion. Sorry, folks, just bear with me a second. Someone's just going to try to get in the room. But one of the worst possible bits of career advice, and I hear this all the time, and I think I probably said to my kids, is just follow your passion. I think we've got to be really careful with that. This is used quite a lot, and as I come back to Andrew Duckworth shortly, there's a point I'm trying to make here that I'll get to in a second or two. So why is it bad advice? Just following your passions. We hear this kind of this all the time. It's bad, I guess, on 3 levels. I think one of the key ones is that it presupposes that passions are fixed. You have one and that's it. And I've got a bit of a problem with that, because if they're fixed, then this kind of takes us into a kind of fixed mindset, does it not? And everyone just kind of puts all their eggs in one basket to follow that passion. But then that would be very easy to drop that basket, because it becomes very difficult to carry sometimes, perhaps. So I get a bit concerned when we kind of go, right, follow that passion. There it is, and that's the way it's always going to be. Surely passions are much more flexible than that, are they not? And I'll explain that in a minute or two. It also presupposes that you have one. Just follow your passion. Well, do you have one? So go back to what we talked about. Is some people are still trying to find their passion. But I get the bit that kind of gets me, the point I'm kind of make, and this is where I kind of take a little bit of issue with Andrew Duckworth and Grit, is bad career advice in many respects, because it just kind of ignores the marketplace. And kind of what I mean by that is your passion just doesn't have to be your job. And I think we confuse that a lot of the time. You know, I'm not to say that you can't be passionate about your job and your job can't be your passion, but it ain't necessarily so. And so I need to be a little bit careful, or we need to kind of be a little bit careful, because I think it can be a bit of a lost cause sometimes, or it can really lead us to disillusionment and to not goal achievement. Is we're trying to find this holy grail of being absolutely passionate about the work we do and being able to kind of earn a great living through following our passions. So I think, you know, there's a slightly different, when we talk about sort of career advice and the like, and here's just a model, and I don't want to kind of go slightly off kilter a little bit, but one of the models often used when we talk about career advice doesn't use the word so much passion as enjoyment. So I think it's important that you know, we try and do stuff that we enjoy at work. But I think enjoyment and passion are quite different. You know, that passion is unbridled. It's that, you know, as we say, it's difficult to control and handle. Passion is a much stronger word. So we're looking at sort of finding careers and developing careers, and, you know, by all means, you know, this should be something we enjoy. It should be something we are good at. So this is about very much, you know, working to where your strengths lie. And I know we talk about strengths and passions, but I talk about strengths and enjoyment perhaps a bit more. It's around direction and having that kind of knowledge of what we're trying to be and where we're trying to go. And it's also, you know, very much about the opportunities that are available, or the opportunities we're able to create. So I don't want to kind of put people off when it comes to kind of work and passion, but I do have this bit of a thing where either we're so busy trying to find passion in work and we can't find it because it's just not there, and I don't have a great problem with finding elsewhere. I'm going to refer you to something again in a minute that kind of explains it slightly better, and also vice versa. So let's just be a little bit careful about this relationship between passion and work. While we're on the kind of theme of passion, and here's a whole different area that we're going to talk more depth in later on down the line when we talk around challenge. But you know, we probably need to just have a quick word on motivation. And I wrote the question down there because it's a conversation I had yesterday with a group. We were talking motivation. And feel free to put a yes or no in the chat box. Does money motivate? Now, as I say, we're not going to spend too much time on this question. Motivation is a massive subject, and that question itself can raise all kinds of discussion points. But I guess my point is this. Okay, thanks, Louise. Minimally, but not primarily. And I think that's fair to say. I think money does motivate to a point whereby you are content with what you've got, and then it doesn't motivate anymore. So we're often motivated to get some money because it fulfills certain needs. Go back to Maslow, or go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but probably not a primary driver. But I think what I'm trying to make the point here is I could be kind of quite glib and saying money does not motivate, categorically doesn't motivate. Money is not a motivator. It's what the money buys that motivates. And so I think we have to go a level deeper that says, okay, what is the money buying you? And maybe that. So as Caroline, you put there, to enable my hobby and desire to compete. So great. So that's where we're talking about. The motivation is not the money. The motivation is the hobby and the desire to compete. But actually, I'm not sure that's the motivator either. So Caroline, I'd probably go a level deeper than that. And what I mean by that is often what I know are intrinsic motivators, intrinsic drivers. What does competing give you? And And that's where that drive and that's where that passion comes from, isn't it? That's where the motivator is the feeling, the sense, the emotion that you get from competing with your horse, or from getting involved in well-being, or whatever it is that the money buys you. So money might buy you a holiday. Holiday is not necessarily the motivator. It's what the holiday gives you, whether that's a sense of freedom, whether that's a sense of adventure, whether that's just relaxation. Now we start to get to the kind of levels of motivation. And that's where passion comes from, is that drive to want to do something. It's where goal achievement comes from, is a real drive to do something that comes not just from a surface level element, an extrinsic driver such as money, but really it's driven from intrinsic drivers, and we need to dig to find those. So again, it's why often workplace drivers, motivators, don't work particularly well, and we don't achieve a lot of organizational goals, is because, you know, really we're only doing it for the kind of money and the money that's going to buy the food. Important, but it's not a real driver underneath it all. So just some thoughts. I'm going to come back to motivation, but that passion bit is really important, I think, to link the two. So just one more thing I want to just chuck in. I'm spending a bit of time on passion, but it's important in terms of a driver. And oh, my slide's not moving. Just bear with me, folks, on that. I don't know, go have a look at a guy called Mark Manson. If you like to be challenged in your thinking a little bit. If you like kind of challenge, and you like someone to kind of get in your face a bit and just make you think about things, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but you know, he is a quite a prolific writer. And one of the kind of articles and blogs that he wrote a little while back is actually one I subscribe to. And you know, Screw Finding Your Passion is the big title there. And he absolutely maintains your passion is right in front of your face. If you have to look, but you're probably not passionate about it at all. So screw finding your passion. And he kind of talks about it in the article, you know, as a kid, you know, you don't try to find your passion, you just did stuff and you liked it, or you didn't like it, and then you liked it for a bit, but then you didn't like it. And so that passion just absolutely comes from within, and it smacks you in the face. If you're having to find it, then something's not right. Often it's not passion, it's the problem. And that's where we get this work kind of issue again. If you've got a passion, you just can't find a way to make it work for you. You can't find a way to make your passion make your money. Well, that's a different problem. You've got a passion. So I think, you know, thinking about it slightly different that way, and go, you know, for a lot of us, you know, we have them. They're there. They're right in front of us, but we just sometimes ignore them or don't realise that they're there, or almost don't want them to be there because they're a kind of distraction from the mundane world that we live in. So sometimes you just need to look right in front of you, and there it is. And then maybe you just want to take it for what it is, whether you can make money out of it or not. That's not the point. Whatever it does, as long as it does something for you, then that's what it's all about, whatever that may be. So go and have a look at Mark Manson, and go and have a look at that article. And if you like kind of just a bit of challenge to the thinking, then that's not, you know, that's not a bad place to go. Okay, so just some thoughts on passion. Number two, second part is perfect practice. And anyone who's kind of dealt in the sports world and perfect practice, anyone who played golf, Ben Hogan is our golfer that you see there. Ben Hogan was a golfer, sort of 30s, 40s, 50s, and was absolutely known for his religious application of practice, and the kind of this concept of perfect practice came from him, and was then developed by a guy called Vince Lombardi, who was another American football coach. And this statement that many of us have heard before is, practice does not make perfect, only perfect practice makes perfect. And I'm an absolute, you know, absolute believer in that from the sports perspective. Then I think that makes perfect sense. Most of us get trapped in this kind of idea that you just got to keep doing it, and that's going to be good enough. And we see it at work all the time. And there's so many studies, you know, whether we're talking management, whether we're talking surgeons and lawyers and architects and whoever, just because you've been doing it for a long time doesn't mean you're going to get any better at it. And actually, a lot of researchers say people get worse at it by just practicing it, by just doing the same stuff day in, day out. You don't develop, you don't improve. So practice is not enough. And one of the books that kind of really brought this to the fore was a book called Outliers. About 10 years ago, a guy called Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote several kind of very popular books, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago. He wrote Blink, a book around unconscious bias, and he wrote a book called Tipping Point. But Outliers, as it says here, the kind of story of success. And he talks about the 10,000 hours. You may have come across the 10,000 hours. And so from research from a guy called Carl Anders Ericsson, he took this guy's research and kind of made this popular book on 10,000 hours, which is what you need to do to master your craft. It takes 10,000 hours approximately to become excellent at something. So that's 10,000 hours of practice. As it says there, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 44 weeks a year for 5.5 years. That's kind of the way it was broken down. And that's okay. There's a truth in that. It takes a huge amount of work to become perfect. We need to practice, and we need to practice an awful lot. So when we're talking about goal achievement, we've got to have a passion, but part of that passion is to be prepared to practice a lot, is to go through repetition, to keep doing it. If we're going to achieve that goal, we've got to practice, we've got to do stuff, we've got to get better at it. But a lot of what was written in Outliers was taking the research done by Carl Anders Ericsson kind of out of context and popularizing a bit. So we need to go a little bit deeper into kind of practice. So this concept of perfect practice has been developed, and there's kind of 3 stages here. So we can have stage number 1, which is naive practice, which is where we just do stuff a lot. And it's almost that mindless repetition. We just get involved in stuff and then we just keep doing it. But then we wonder why we don't really get to our goal. We don't get any better. We might get to easy goals, but we certainly we probably won't get to challenging goals. So naive practice is just kind of 10,000 hours is not enough. What Ericsson was really talking about in the first instance was what is termed purposeful practice. And as you can see, there are kind of 5 principles behind purposeful practice. So we need to have a very specific goal or practice, no great surprise there, that we absolutely need focus. It's focus, and we need to be focused. So that ability, and we'll come back to that ability in a minute or two, of focus is critical. We need feedback. So we have to be receiving and taking and working on feedback, and I'll come back to that in a minute or two. And the learner is then pushed outside the comfort zone. So I think we talked about this before, and we talked about this in goal setting, is that we need to actually move forward, and for achievement, we need to step outside that comfort zone. We need to be challenged. As I said, we're going to talk about this in the next webinar in much more detail, challenge. But getting outside that comfort zone is really important. And then what's really important is that the learner is creative and works through temporary plateaus and new techniques and approaches. And that's the bit that many aren't good at, whether they don't have the time to do it, whether they don't have the inclination to do it, whether they don't have the skill to do it. But for many of us, we just get stuck, and we just keep doing the same things, but then we wonder why we never improve. And it's our ability to be able to find different ways to be able to work through these plateaus, to go, okay, this is not working, I need to do something different, and be prepared to stretch and push beyond to find new ways of doing it. And that's obviously why things like feedback are really important, because feedback gives us measurement to know whether we're improving or not. But feedback also may give us ideas. So there are 2 key elements that I think we'll come on to in a second, is around sort of measurement and ideas. So we'll come back to feedback in a second or two. So as Ericsson said, get outside your comfort zone, but do it in a focused way, with clear goals, a plan for reaching those goals, and a way to monitor your progress. Oh, and by the way, don't forget, we need to figure out a way of maintaining that motivation. So again, motivation is key, and we'll come back to it again. But there is one step further. So Anders Ericsson talked about purposeful practice, which is good, which is great. But then he sort of took it to one level further, which is known as deliberate practice. So our ideal, our perfect practice is actually known as deliberate practice. And there are two bits we add onto the purposeful practice. So one is done in a well-defined field where it's possible to differentiate an expert and a novice. So this is where role models are important, is where we know what good really looks like. We know what brilliant looks like, is we need to have some kind of example. It's very difficult to really develop to a place where there's no model. We can't see expertise. We have no idea. So where there is a clear difference between an expert and a novice, we can then see what makes them different, what makes someone good. So we need to find someone good or find excellence and expertise, and then understand why what they're doing is different from what the novice is doing. And part of that process then is having a mentor, a coach, a teacher, who's giving that feedback and is actively involved in finding and helping you find techniques to improve, whatever it may be, and whether that's in the workplace, whether that's in the sporting environment, whether that's at school. That experienced teacher and coach who's actively involved makes a huge difference in deliberate practice. So those two things are added onto purposeful practice is really what we're looking to do. And that's not an easy thing. And believe me, you know, I apply this in the sports field an awful lot, and I talk about it all the time. And yet I still get caught in this kind of realm of mindless practice, of naive practice, where I just go and do stuff. And I'm not really conscious of what I'm doing. I'll go for a bike ride and I'm thinking, actually, what am I trying to achieve here? Well, what's the point in this? Am I trying to go fast? Am I trying to build endurance? Am I trying to build strength? What am I trying to do here? So, you know, even someone who's kind of so involved in it as I am, still makes that a mistake. So deliberate practice is a tough thing to do. So I picked out just two things that I've kind of mentioned before, and just two models that sit around that. So number one, the biggest difficulty in deliberate practice. Here's a model we may be familiar with this unconscious competence model. So we have these 4 stages of often used in learning and development and in achievement. So unconscious incompetence, unaware that we're unable to do something, probably because we've never done it before. So, you know, if you've never driven a car, you don't know that you're not able to drive a car. But it also may be that we've had no feedback or we've got no measurement. So go back to that again. It may be that I'm doing something, but I've no idea whether I'm doing it well, because I've not seen anyone else do it. I've got no measurement and I've got no feedback. So it's not a great place to be, and yet many of us are stuck in that unconscious incompetence place. Oops, sorry, wrong around. So what we're trying to do is move towards conscious incompetence, i.e. go and do it and then find out you're not very good at it, or get some feedback to tell you you're not very good at it. So we're one step further forward here, is at least we know what we're not good at. We might not like it, and a lot of people shy away from this. They become aware of what they're not very good at, and they move away from it. Is that they just try and drop it, they ignore it, or they're frightened from it. If we're talking about goal achievement, we need to move on to the next step. So the next step, conscious competence. So this is the build phase, isn't it? This is the learning stage. This is, what do I need to do to become competent? Do I need to go on a training course? Do I need to read a book, watch a video, join a webinar? Do I need to be practicing in a perfect way? What do I need to be practicing? So there's a huge amount that needs to go on between conscious incompetence and conscious competence. But then what happens is we get to this 4th stage, unconscious competence. We get to the place where we're good at it and we can do it quite naturally. We drive a car, we don't have to think about driving the car. We can make phone calls, we can listen to music, we can do all kinds of stuff. That's a really good place to be in many respects. You know, our brain quite likes being in that place, but we don't have to think too hard about doing stuff. It gives us a bit of sort of peace and a bit of tranquility and a bit of scope to do other stuff. But of course, it's a really dangerous place to be. There's not much difference often between unconscious competence and unconscious incompetence. And when we're talking about purposeful and deliberate practice, the biggest challenge and the biggest difficulty is focus, is staying in conscious competence. It's really hard work. And I don't have an easy solution. We'll be talking about challenges, I've said several times, and so I'll have some solutions. But it's that ability to stay focused, that ability to find the zone, the ability to stay conscious in the goal achievement process that's really important. and not to be taking things for granted and not to be moving away from stuff. Is how focused are you, how on what you're doing on a minute-to-minute, day-by-day basis. It is the key to goal achievement, that level of focus, conscious competence. And the other thing that I've mentioned, which is the kind of often called the unsung hero of deliberate practice, which is feedback. And as I've said, feedback essentially takes two forms. So on the one hand, it's just simple measurement. So we get feedback by, if I'm going to run 10 miles, I can measure it exactly, and thus I know that I'm faster or I'm slower. So I can get digital feedback. And the other one is coaching. So I'll have a coach that helps me through that and tells me that I was slow at one stage or faster at another, etc. So this feedback is important. Here's just a very simple feedback model. And again, it introduces a few things that we're going to talk about a little bit further on down the line. So a 4-stage model of feedback. And this is a kind of workplace model, so it's used quite a lot. So the 4 stages is about starting with what is known. So this is the kind of coaching element. Asking, what did you do well? So you can ask yourself this: what did I do well? What went well? What did I like? Or we have someone ask us the question, the coach. So this is about thinking stuff and using positivity to go, what was good? Say number 2 then is, once we've asked, is we can then give that feedback to someone else. And so this is about what you did well was, and this is the kind of realm of the mentor, the expert. So the coaching and mentoring are fundamentally different things. And without spending too much time on it now, coaching is a questioning technique. Coaching is about extracting what lies within someone. So it's all about asking questions to reach high performance. Mentoring is about giving knowledge, wisdom, advice, and guidance. You don't need to be an expert to be a coach, except an expert in asking questions and extraction. But you do need to be an expert or experienced when you're mentoring. And so we're looking for both of these in feedback. So we have the coaching element, asking what we did well, and then perhaps we get the feedback in terms of being told what was well or what we did do well. We then ask what we could do differently or what someone else could do differently. And then finally, what you could do differently is ideas, difference, getting over the plateau. So models of feedback, I think, are really important, because feedback is something that is quite sensitive, that a lot of people don't like very much, in terms of, we kind of know we should get it and we know it's useful, but we don't necessarily like receiving it. And also we don't like giving it to a certain degree. And when we do, we don't do it very well. We tend to tell too much, or we just tend to ask too much. So that balance of good feedback is really important in the goal achievement scenario, and particularly in terms of deliberate practice. So just a few thoughts. We've talked about passion. We've talked about perfect practice. The final one, we don't need to spend very much time on. And again, because it very much forms where we're going in the next webinars. So what I'm going to do is just set it up really for the next webinar. So our 3rd P was about perseverance. So goal achievement, finding that passion, which is absolutely critical. Then refining that kind of passion into something that's structured, something that has a kind of process that we can follow through, and that's where deliberate practice comes into the mix. But fine, doesn't matter how passionate you are. It doesn't matter how purposeful you are and how well you practice. You will almost certainly have obstacles. You will almost certainly have difficulties. If you don't, then I would suggest that the goal is probably not stretching enough and not challenging enough, and perhaps we should be looking at making it a little bit more challenging. So perseverance fundamentally is a good thing. Is we want to persevere, strangely enough. Why? Because we want challenge, because challenge is good, and that's where we're headed in the next workshop or the next webinar. But just some thoughts on perseverance, without kind of just leaving it completely to one side at the moment. So, how do we do this kind of thing, or what is it we need to be thinking about? So a couple of things that I've talked about before. So just to kind of bring you back to a couple of models. So when I talk perseverance, I often go back to this, the Stoic triangle. spending a lot of time looking at Stoicism these days, or have done for a while, but more so these days. And you may or may not remember, and those that are new, the Stoic triangle talks about eudaimonia, your inner good demon, or often known as well-being, is finding well-being, or flourishing is the words used in positive psychology. And there are sort of three elements. And I think when it comes to perseverance, these are three good bits of advice. So in no particular order, but at the top there, take responsibility. So in terms of persevering, what often happens is we start to blame. If it's not going right and we get into struggles, we start to look at, you know, our boss, our coach, our teacher. We blame our kids, we blame our spouses, we blame anybody except ourselves. And so, goal achievement starts to fail at the first hurdle because we start to blame other people. So it's absolutely key that we accept that it's our responsibility, it's our goal, it's our responsibility to follow that goal through and achieve it. Number two, control the controllables. Focus on what you can control. So simple question when we come across these blockages and barriers, is it something I can control? And this is where the advice always is that kind of bite-sized pieces, is breaking things down. Go back to the goal setting, which is about your process goals. And right in the very kind of first webinar, we talked about an exercise known as ambitious targets, which is breaking ambitious kind of targets down into small bite-sized pieces, into chunks, chunking. So this is about absolutely breaking things down to what we can control. So we take responsibility and then find the bits that we can control. I can't control winning a race. I can't control necessarily how fast I ride on a bike, but I can control going out on the bike in the morning and being very conscious about what I'm trying to do. I can do that in work, and I can do that in my domestic environment. And then finally, with living with arete. So arete is that kind of virtuous self, you being your best self. So when the Stoics talk about arete, it's living to be your best self, and there's that gap between the kind of self we are on a day-to-day basis and our ideal self, and how close do we get to it on a day-to-day basis. What I mean by that, when I'm talking about sort of goal achievement, is just putting your best foot forward every day, is giving it a go, is just keep trying to do your best. It doesn't mean your best is going to work, but all you can do is do your best. And that's what I say living with arete. On goal achievement and perseverance within goal achievement, you've got to turn up. You've got to give it a go. You've got to try your best, whatever your best looks like on that day. And it may not be great, but at least it's something. So I think that's really important in terms of just kind of sometimes these things can be insurmountable, these obstacles and blockages in our path, but one step at a time. I'm going to leave you with quite a graphic that we'll come back to, because it's where we're kind of going to start when we look on this challenge bit. So it's quite small, some of the words. So on the right-hand side in the big letters, I think is where we're going to need to go with it. But as you can see at the top there, goal achievement to a large degree, and we started with Angela Duckworth and grit, and we're also finished with it too, is she talks an awful lot about in grit, the growth mindset, a lady called Carol Dweck, who sort of popularized this concept of growth mindset. And in goal achievement, it's so important, is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, that ability to adapt to challenges, that belief that we can achieve, we can do stuff. So I've just highlighted some of the kind of the steps that we need to go through, and these are our basis for coming up to challenge, and the next one in particular, which is taking risk. So that fixed mind, the growth mindset, looks at embracing challenge. We want the challenge. We look forward to challenge. That C of mental toughness on challenge is proactive. It's about wanting to take on board challenge, not fearing challenge. So mental toughness is about resilience, is being able to bounce back. It's about fortitude. It's about not getting knocked over, but also it's about challenge. It's about endeavor. It's about moving forward. And so there's a key element that we need to kind of spend a bit more time on the next session. Persistence in the face of setbacks. So again, we come back to this concept of perseverance. See efforts as path to mastery. So, really important is this kind of concept of learning and getting better. And I guess when we talk about things that you're passionate about and intrinsic drivers, for me, one of my key drivers is about getting better. That's what I'm kind of interested in. It's not particularly competitive unless it's competitive with myself. But the bit I love about challenge and difficulty and achieving goals is that I'm learning. And it just means I'm getting better. And that's key for me. And that allows me to learn from criticism. And I think that's really important. I hate criticism, but I learn from it a huge amount. So I'm very open to that. And very much about finding lessons and inspiration in the success of others. And we kind of mentioned around this kind of concept of coaches and mentors and role models. And in the model of sort of goal achievement and growth mindset, then seeing others' successes, seeing others kind of take on challenges and succeed, I think is really important. So this concept of growth mindset, I think is really important as we move forward into our next C of the 4C model, which is challenge. We've talked about control. We've talked about commitment, so control, self-control and emotional control. Commitment now, we've talked goal setting and a little bit around goal achievement, being 3 elements: passion, perfect practice, and perseverance. So next time round, we will be moving to the 3rd C of challenge. And if you remember, there are 2 elements of that: risk and learning. So we will start with risk, our willingness, preparedness, ability to take risks. So that's where we'll be headed. And then after that one, there will be learning from risks and the whole lot around learning before we move into the final C. Probably later in the year by the rate that we are going, because the next one is going to be on Thursday, the 9th of September. On the way for August, so there'll be a gap of a month or so. So we will come back. I'll put a message out on Facebook, and I'll probably do a bit more marketing in the meantime. But Thursday, the 9th of September is the intended date. And yeah, we should be going through risk. So I've gone right through to the whole hour. I told you it wouldn't be 45 minutes. So let me leave you at that. Just a couple of things. The previous sessions are on the YouTube channel. So they are available on the YouTube channel, Let's Talk Tough YouTube channel. You can go and find the webinars there that we've done already. So by all means, go to there. This one will be up there tomorrow, I hope. And I will, if you send me an email would be the ideal way. I'll reply with any PDFs of stuff that we've talked about will be the easiest way to do it. So contact me at either info@letstalktough.co.uk or David at letstalktough.co.uk, or get me on the Facebook page, Let's Talk Tough UK, and I will, by all means, share any PDFs or any knowledge, information, and slides, etc. Otherwise, folks, thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you for your time. Hope it was useful. Hope it's given you some food for thought. As always, go do something practical. Go do something with it. Don't just think about it, go do it. Have a good rest of the day, and see you next time. Thank you all.